All right, guys, welcome to lesson number 50. This is a milestone because hopefully with this class, we're going to try to wrap macroeconomics around. Don't worry, if you don't finish the material, you will definitely get another class. But this is basically, we're trying to conclude this with a continuation of international trade and understanding currencies and how different parts of international trade work. And one of the last things we're going to touch is actually tariff and quotas. Okay, but right before we start talking about trade and tariffs and all that, let's talk about exchange rates because that was your homework question. All right, so the question was the following. We said that what changes in exchange rate? And as you know, you've probably seen this in the last class, so let's talk about it a little more in detail. What's the first reason? Well, it's interest rates. Why are interest rates important? Okay, if I'm an investor, I always am thinking, where is the highest rate of return? Right? I'm always thinking that because for me as an investor, if I have $100, right, I want to make the most amount of money on that $100. Okay. So if interest rates are higher in Dubai than they are in Qatar, I'm going to invest in Dubai. Okay. Always also relative to your country as well, because obviously it's easiest to invest in your country, right? All you have to do is just go and invest in your local bank. But if there's a significant difference and interest rates are going up, investors actually invest in other countries, and that's what happens, right? But it's not as simple as saying, hey, you know, we have so much money, let's dollar in the US, interest rates are going up, let's invest in the dollar. There's a lot of repercussions. And we're here to explain to you about that. Okay? So if interest rates go up, right, the demand for the dollar goes up. Okay? Demand for the dollar goes up, the dollar appreciates. How do we connect that? How do we say, hey, you know, investment goes up, demand for the dollar goes up? Because graphically speaking, what we could say is about, use the side of the board to just draw a quick graph for you. Basically what we're trying to tell you guys is that, let's take the dollar market. Okay? And you have a supply and a demand, right? And this is a price of the dollar, right? Of the dollar in euro, in a foreign currency. This is your exchange rate on your y-axis. On your x-axis, you have the quantity of dollar. The equilibrium gives you the price and the quantity of dollar. That's fine. But we're saying in the event of interest rates going up in the US, we're saying that a lot of investors from the world will come in and put in dollars into the US because they're going to exchange their currency. Let's say you're coming in from Kuwait, where they use dinars, right? And they take their dinars and they exchange for dollars. And they're going to come into America and they're going to put it in American bank accounts because that's where they're getting the high interest rates. Because remember, interest rates are going up. So what that does is all of this interest in the US dollar, right? All this interest in the US dollar is going to increase the demand for the US dollar, okay? And this increases the value of the US dollar, okay? And that's how that transition is done. So interest rates are important, regardless of saying. Okay? What's the next part of the thing? We talked about political stability. Political stability. Why is political stability important? It's pretty simple and straightforward. You guys probably see the paper a lot. There are a lot of unstable economies in the world, a lot of unstable governments. An unstable economy is actually a root of an unstable government in a lot of cases. I'm not saying all. If you look at South America, Africa, Asia, there are a lot of parts of the world that have unstable economies. So political stability, if there's a higher political stability, generally speaking, again, this is general, the currency is stronger. It's stronger, all right? So political stability has to do a lot with exchange rates. The other part we talked about is relative level of income. Why is the relative level of income important? Let's say that relative to other countries, let's say you are in Korea and I am in Singapore, and the Korean economy has increased. They're doing well, right? And a lot of great companies in Korea are doing extremely well, right? So they're delivering the drive in the Korean economy, and all of a sudden the Korean citizens make more money. So income has gone up, our GDP has gone up, right? So if that's happened, well, the increase in the income is going to increase the imports. Why is that true? Why would that link imports? Because imagine, you're in Korea and all of a sudden you make more money, okay? You make more money. If you make more money, relative to the world, your purchasing power is increased, always relative to the world, okay? So relative to the world, all of a sudden you can afford to buy more products from the rest of the world. So me sitting in Singapore, you can buy more of my products. Okay. So that's fine. I understand that. But how does it increase the import? So because things are cheaper, you always go for the cheaper product. If you're getting the same value and it's cheaper, why not, right? Let's say you go to two stores. Okay, they're exactly so close next to each other. Okay, one sells milk for $2 and one sells milk for $1, and there's no difference in the milk. What are you going to do, right? You're going to buy the milk that's cheaper. Okay, so that's why imports go up. And if imports go up, there's a demand for other currencies that goes up, and your currency actually gets devalued. So the currency goes down. So relative level of income is important. The other part is relative inflation. Same concept. If in your country, right, let's say we'll stick to Korea and me being in Singapore. Let's say in Korea, all of a sudden inflation is up. Okay, relatively speaking, things are more expensive in Korea than they are in Singapore. You're going to import more, right, because you can afford to buy more things in Singapore. So imports are going to go up. Again, demand for Singaporean currency goes up, and that depreciates your Korean currency. Okay. Vice versa. If Singapore products, Singapore has more inflation, Singaporeans will invest in Korea, and Korean currency will become stronger. So it just depends. These are all examples that are not necessarily taken from the real world. Okay. Last but not least is speculation. Why is speculation important? Investors are always looking at news, right? They're always looking at news. They're saying, well, is the Kuwaiti dinar going to be stronger? Is the US economy going to be stronger? Is the European economy going to be stronger? Are the interest rates in Korea going up? All of this dictates how money flows in and out, okay? Because people want to make the most amount of money. Simple as that. So speculation dictates how currencies move up and down. All right. Let's get to the new topic, which is connecting monetary policy to exchange rates. Awesome. Let's do this. So go ahead and we'll erase this part. And let's talk about connecting. You know, all of it, I feel that you guys can already do this, but I'm going over it just to connect the dots a little bit and tie in, because quite a bit now we've been talking about currencies. And before that we talked about monetary policy, but they both are very much so interrelated with each other, especially because we talked about interest rates, right? So let's explain that real quick. And let's get to it. All right. Oops. All right, so let's talk about interest rates. All right, so this section is called Let's Connect. That's a horrible O, by the way. There we go. Let's connect monetary policy. Monetary policy. All right, so let's connect monetary policy. So you guys have seen this 100,000 times. Let's start off with increasing money supply. Okay. What does increasing money supply do? Well, you guys have probably seen this before. Increasing money supply, if there's more of something, we said this basic principle is that things become cheaper, and the way we talk about that is nominal interest rates, so interest rates come down. But here's the part where we get to connect it, right? So we always used to go from here. We say, well, interest rates go down. We talk about investment, right? We used to say investments go up because actually money is cheaper to borrow. Investment goes up, 80 goes up, so on and so forth, right? But in this class, we're not going to go there as of yet. We're going to go from increasing money supply, okay, which decreases interest rates, obviously, right? Everyone remembers that graph, hopefully. Now, the next part, we talked about a little bit before. We said, what changes exchange rates? We said exchange rates change because of interest rates. We said that if interest rates go up, actually, the demand for that currency goes up because people come into that because they want to get more money back. Same thing applies here, but it's the exact opposite, right? We said interest rates go down. If interest rates go down, it's not as attractive anymore. People will pull out of that currency. The demand will actually shift left. And that's exactly what happens, but we show it in terms of demand. And in this case, it's a dollar. So this is interest rates in the US. Okay. In the US go down. And if they go down in the US, the demand for the US dollar actually goes down. if the demand for the US dollar goes down, the exchange rate for the US dollar actually goes down. Okay? Exchange rate for the US dollar goes down, right? And then we've got, what does that affect? Well, that affects exports because relatively speaking, your exports are going to increase because other countries are now relatively richer than you, right? Because your currency is lost some value. So your exports are going to increase. If your exports increase, we've seen this before, your AD goes up. Okay. So this is the new connection that we've made, right? And this was the old connection that we used to make. Both are relevant, but both are something you need to keep in mind. Okay? What about the opposite? What if money supply actually goes down? Money supply going down, before we used to say, well, interest rates go up because it's more expensive now because there's less of money. And that makes investments go down. And that makes aggregate demand go down, right? But let's connect currencies. We actually said, well, let's think about this. Let's say if money supply goes down, interest rates obviously go up, right? We know the graph. Okay, pretty simple, straightforward stuff. Now, what if investment, excuse me, we already talked about investment. So this time we're going to talk about interest rates and affecting dollars, right? So this is again in the US. Okay, in the US, interest rates go up. Now, what did I say? I said if interest rates go up, it actually becomes more attractive. Right? So investors all of a sudden from Saudi Arabia, from Euro, they're considering the US. So there's a huge influx of dollars coming in to the US economy, right? Because people are selling their pounds, they're selling their euros, and they want dollars because they want to put in dollars in the US bank account so they can get higher money back. Okay? So if they get that, right? So if interest rates go up, actually the demand for the dollar increases, right? Quite opposite from what we've seen before. And if that's true, your exchange rate increases. It increases, right? If that increases, right, then your dollar is appreciated. And that actually makes the exports go down, right? Because all of a sudden your imports go up because you can afford more. You know, Americans can afford more. And so that actually causes AD to decrease. Either way, there's some key things. So we've now made a new chain of events. So these, I've highlighted how money supply going down can relate to demand for the dollar and how money supply going up. Either way, the end product is the same, right? So guys, when we have linked money supply, all right, to AD before using investment, either way, it's still the same result. When money supply goes down, AD is going down. When excuse me for my sneeze there, but if money supply goes up, your AD goes up. Okay? Either way, same result. All right? Okay, so let's talk about free trade for a little bit, and then I'll jump into tariffs. All right? So in terms of free trade, there's an advantage and a disadvantage. Okay? I think we can talk about it. I think it's not... I just want to discuss it real fast. The advantage is that basically when economists argue that the standard of living increases for both the countries. When you're in a free trade, let's talk, we gave an example before, we said NAFTA is an example, right? We said in NAFTA we have Mexico, Canada, and the US all interacting with each other, okay, in terms of trade, and the regulations for trade have come down, right? They've made it really easy for people to trade. So that arguably increases the standard of living because it efficiently allocates resources, okay? Disadvantage. Okay, so imagine if there's cheaper labor in Mexico than in the US, right? So the US minimum wage is higher than the Mexico minimum wage. The argument is that the US is actually going to lose jobs because we're going to replace labor, okay, with the cheaper labor because firms always want to maximize profit. It's a pretty big microeconomic concept. So people who argue against free trade say, well, we're going to lose jobs. It's sort of true, right? Because if you want to decrease costs and labor is one of those costs, well, if you find cheap labor, you're going to replace them, right? That's what a firm theoretically would do. Okay. Of course, there's a lot of other things, But it's true. You want to maximize profit, decrease costs? Well, you have labor that's cheaper. People are going to use them. Okay? So what's the fix? How do we make sure that we don't lose jobs, right? And we're going to get into this new topic called tariffs. So let's talk about tariffs. I'm not so sure how many people have heard of tariffs before, but they exist. I'm sure people who have talked about agriculture in the past have talked about tariffs, right? There are all kinds of tariffs, but in this class we're going to talk about two main tariffs, right? We're going to talk about a revenue tariff, and I believe the other one is a protective tariff. All right, so let's talk about tariffs. Tariffs are designed for a couple of different reasons, but they're designed actually to protect businesses, domestic businesses, right? And they're also designed to make revenue for the government, okay? So there's two good things that come out of it for the government, right? But just the consumer actually kind of loses out. And you guys are going to see this, right? So let's talk about tariffs. All right. Tariffs. Awesome. Tariffs are two types. There's protective tariff. And then there is revenue tariff. Okay, so we've got protective and revenue. Let's define protective. Protective tariff is exercise, not exercise. Exercise would be exercise, but it is an excise. So excise tax. So it is a tax levied on a good that is made domestically. Okay, so taxes are levied. That's the word. On a good that's made domestically. Made domestically. Okay. Now let's talk about the other kind of tariff, which is a revenue tariff. Revenue tariff is an excise tariff on goods that are not made domestically. Pretty opposite, right? So tax on goods that are not made domestically. Okay. All right. So why are they designed? Okay. So the protective tariff is designed so that this can protect, I'll correct it. More than correcting, okay, more than protecting, revenue tariffs are designed to make, pretty straightforward, right, to make revenue. How does this happen? Let's imagine a product that's not made in the US, okay? So let's, this is not true at all by any means, but let's talk about European beer. Okay, European beer. So people like European beer, lots of kinds of European beer. And if you've gone ever to the aisle of European beer, right? Or let's talk about any other European product. Let's talk about Swiss chocolate, right? So if you say Swiss chocolate, well, let's say there's a revenue tariff because Swiss chocolate is not made in America. So it's made in Switzerland, right? So you go to the aisle and you check Hershey's and it's $1, right? Hershey's is $1. Swiss chocolate is like $10, okay? But if you actually go to Switzerland, it's actually about $5 in Switzerland. So what is this difference, right? I'm not saying it's all of it. I mean, a lot of it is shipping. A lot of it is, it is a premium chocolate, so the pricing is different. So there are a couple of different reasons. But maybe there is a revenue tariff on Swiss chocolate, right? Because the government is saying, hey, listen, you know what? Swiss chocolate is not made in America, right? And people are going to consume Swiss chocolate anyways. Okay, they're going to consume Swiss chocolate anyways. So what if we put in a revenue tariff, right? We put in a tariff that is going to be levied on this imported product. People are going to consume it anyways. People who want Swiss chocolate are going to buy Swiss chocolate, whether it's $10 or $20, right? So if they put a revenue tariff, it gives the government a source of money, gives a source of income. Okay, so that's revenue tariff for you. What about protective tariff? It's on a good that is made domestically. Why is that important? It's actually designed to protect, domestic firms. So let's say this. Let's give you guys an example. Let's say that, I'm sure a lot of you in the world use Texas Instruments as a calculator. Okay, for those of you in the US, I know in my, back in the day when we went to school, we'd use a TI-83 Plus, and we all use Texas Instruments, right? Now imagine there's a Chinese company, okay? This is just an example, again, hypothetical. But there's a Chinese company who makes the exact same product, okay? And if you pay $100 for a Texas Instrument calculator, same company is going to offer the same product for a different name for $50. Pretty good deal, right? Same product, but half the money, right? So all of a sudden, people go to class and they realize, why am I paying twice as much am I supposed to? I can just use this Chinese calculator. That's going to cost half as much, right? Cost half as much. And I get the same value out of it. So people all of a sudden are going to switch over from Texas Instruments to this new Chinese company or whatever company it is. Okay, it could be from any part of the world, but not the US, okay, because we're talking from the US perspective. Okay? So what that does is it decreases business for, let's say, Texas Instruments in this case, right? And that might destroy business, and that might destroy the jobs within the economy, right? Because Texas Instrument is a huge company, and they employ a lot of different people. And that'll hurt the American economy, right? So the point is, these are designed, so protective tariff will say, hey, you know what, you can buy the Chinese calculator, or whatever calculator it is, but $50 is the price. I agree with you, but we're actually going to put a protective tariff of about $20. Okay? What that does is it now makes it $70, right? And now you're all of a sudden thinking, well, maybe Texas Instruments comes with a warranty, maybe they're a reputable company, a brand name and whatnot, not as inclined. So all of a sudden they've eaten into their market and protected Texas Instrument out of losing some business. So a protective tariff is designed to help domestic companies. All right. So what are the effects of tariff? Let's talk about the effects of tariff. We'll talk about quota, and then we're just about done. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and erase this. Okay. So let's talk about effects of tariff. Already we talked about two different tariffs. We said revenue tariff, which is designed to make revenue for the government. Okay. So that's one. Two is we talked about protective tariff. We said that, well, if competitors from other countries come in, we have a protective tariff designed to help our domestic businesses. So effects of tariff include they include a consumer surplus being lost. So CS, so consumer surplus goes down. Why is that true? Why is that true? Well, if you imagine, consumer surplus is oftentimes gone if the prices go up, okay? Because it takes power from the consumer and puts it in the producer, right? So this is because prices are going up because of these tariffs, okay? So obviously one of the things is consumer pays more, okay? Pays more for the same product, all right? All right, so what about another one? It said domestic producers actually can increase output. So domestic producers actually benefit with a protective tariff, right? Domestic producers benefit. All right, What about another one? Talked about decrease in imports because if there's a protective tariff, we talked about that Chinese company being taxed. Well, it's not profitable for them to operate at that margin, so imports go down. Tariff revenue, we talked about how revenue is affected, right? We talked about how government with a revenue tariff can actually make more money, right? Because imagine we said Swiss chocolate, well, people want to consume that chocolate no matter what happens. So if there's a tariff, if there's a revenue tax put on that Swiss chocolate, well, government is going to make money. Because if I want Swiss chocolate, I have no go, but I can't really travel to Switzerland, right? I'd go to my local store and buy my Swiss chocolate and pay that tariff. So it creates tariff revenue, okay? It's another one. It actually increases inefficiency, and we'll talk about this a little more in detail. Why does inefficiency go up? Well, imagine I told you guys a little bit more about free trade. That free trade is good because what it does is it decreases the regulations. And if it decreases regulations, well, increases the efficiency of allocation of resources because, well, if there's less red tape, me as a person, let's say I'm in Mexico and I want to trade with someone in Canada, right? I have less regulations and rules and paperwork to move across goods. So these countries can trade without having red tape, right? So they're more efficient. Unfortunately, there's a tariff involved with it. There is less of an incentive to be as free in terms of trading, right? So there's more inefficiency involved with tariffs. All right, let's come to our last part, which is quota, okay? So we'll use this part of the board to talk about quotas, right? So quota, let's talk about quota. I'll define it on this side, and we'll start off here. Quotas. What are quotas? What are they? Quotas are basically the max amount of good that you can buy. Max amount of a good you can buy. All right, so let's say that cigars, okay, they're premium, okay, and or let's say, you know, we love chocolate in this class. So let's say there's a quota of chocolate. You can only buy up to $100 million worth of chocolate, okay? What does this do? This increases the prices because all of a sudden supply goes down, right? Increases prices, decreases consumer surplus, okay? Decreases consumer surplus, okay? And decreases the allocation of resources, okay? Less efficient. Quotas are designed for a lot of different things. They could be designed to limit and protect a domestic company. They could be, normally it's decided by the government. And whatever they think that's fitting, that is deserved to have a cap on, they go ahead and put on a quota. Again, this decreases consumer surplus and creates something called as dead weight loss. Okay, dead weight loss. Dead weight loss. All right, class. That being said, let's recap real quick what we went over. We talked about connecting monetary policy to currency exchange rates. We talked about free trade for a little bit. We talked about tariffs, two types, protective and revenue. Protective is designed so that we can protect our domestic businesses. Revenue tariff is designed to create revenue for the government. Effects of tariff include consumer surpluses lost, consumers pay higher amount, domestic producers a benefit, imports can go down, tariff revenue is created, and inefficiency goes up. Quotas are basically the max amount that a good can be imported into the country. Okay, be imported into the country. So these are all the main parts of this lesson. I'm not going to assign a homework question since this is going to be our last lesson. However, we are going to cover practice questions in the next class. So we will go over to multiple choice questions as well as free response, so that will give you guys a little bit of taste of how the real AP test is going to be. Thank you so much for joining me. I really wish you guys good luck. I think one of the best examples or best piece of advice I can give you guys is just practice. Honestly, practice as much as you can and review before you go into the test. So good luck, and I'll see you guys in the next class.